Becky and I are sitting here in Oshawa. Love to be there. However, Chris Holland periodically um, shows pictures that he has of Newfoundland on his Facebook page, and we look at those and we enjoy seeing them because it makes us feel like we're actually there, even when we're sitting here. And we've been watching, well, I've been watching, Becky's been paying attention here. I've been looking out the window because there's a squirrel that's been doing some very fancy footwork. A couple of birds who thought that was a bad idea, and he nearly lost his footing on a limb, and he's gone someplace. I don't know. He didn't fall, so we don't have to worry about that. But it's kind of an interesting day, and we're right here among the trees and so on, and we can see what's going on over here in the green space beside our home here in Curtis, Ontario, right next door to Oshawa. Well, Becky, it's Mother's Day tomorrow.
Yes, it is.
And maybe you have a thought or two.
I do have, yes. Like Mark says, tomorrow is a very special day for all women, and it's called Mother's Day. Back in the early 1900s in the United States during a war, there was a gal by the name of Anna Jarvis. Anna was watching her mother take care of the wounded soldiers. No matter whose side they were on, she took tender care of them. Anna decided she wanted to honor her mother by doing something special for her. In 1914, Anna got President Woodrow Wilson to sign a proclamation making the second Sunday in May Mother's Day. So even if you don't have children, but have a heart that cares for others, like Anna's mom did, then tomorrow is your day also. So let me be one of the first out there to, let me start that one over. So let me be one of the first to tell you ladies out there, Happy Mother's Day. Okay.
Thank you. Well, I just want you to know that we've noticed periodically that internet from here can be a little bit scratchy on weekends. So if we shut off the video feed just to give us more bandwidth, it's not because we don't like you, we do. And we'd just as soon be there in Newfoundland, right among you, but then again, probably we wouldn't be permitted to even be very close to you, would we? So in this day and age, it's interesting. We need to be adaptable, and we can be grateful that we have a word from the Lord. And we need to spend time with the word. It's a great comfort and a great inspiration to us in times of opportunity and challenge. So in today's meditation, I thought we might think a little bit about the insight to Christian living that we get from the Apostle Paul. If you've read those letters from Paul to the Christian church, they're very interesting to read. Do you like reading other people's letters?
You too.
It's kind of interesting if you have a bunch of them in kind of a box from a mom or dad or grandparents or whatever. And here in church today, we're going to take a few minutes to look over the shoulder of the Apostle Paul as he wrote to people in a town called Philippi, to the Philippians. And the question that we're interested in today is a question of how does one live a life of faith in a real world? You know, the backstory to the Apostle Paul and everything that he writes is he had a very interesting experience, didn't he? He goes from a guy who goes by the name of Saul and was very unfriendly, I think we could say, to the Christian church, to a man with a new name. And the new name, I think, signified the reality that when we are with Christ, we have a new identity, don't we? It's completely different. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to know that Jesus can take whatever past people may hang on to about you, or whatever past you have to deal with, and the reality of the memories that you have, and he can replace that with a totally new makeover. That's what happened to Paul. But in the process of that, he still had kind of a rough time even after he became Paul, don't you? Remember that? You know, it's kind of interesting because I was looking last night in the literature of the New Testament, and I read episodes where Paul experienced beating, shipwreck, snake bite. Can you imagine? Prison, loneliness. And as you read the end of some of his letters, sometime it would be interesting just for you to take a few minutes and read the endings of the letters that he wrote to other people. And he said things like, bring something for me to read. He was in prison now. And most everybody had left him. He says, Luke is still here. Everybody else is gone. And would you bring me something to read, he said. And then also he said, could you bring something to keep me warm? And then he made a very interesting statement, shows how human Christian life, the life of faith, really is. He says, come before winter. Obviously, if you ask for somebody to bring a coat, you don't need that during the summertime. You need that when the snow is flying. Which, by the way, we were just looking at snow out the window, weren't we?
We were.
It was just flurries. Nothing to worry about. It's not headed your direction, I don't think. But
And
it
that's
could
what I
be.
took the picture of.
And so she took a picture of that. Sometimes Becky takes pictures when she's in church. I just want to let you know
Yes,
that when she shows up, she sometimes takes pictures of windows, people, Bibles, whatever. So anyway, the Apostle Paul is so real and so authentic. Philippians chapter 4. I'd just like to take a look at 4 things that we can notice and think about as we are sheltering in place, as we're maybe not as close to people as we would prefer to be, but we can be close to Jesus, and we can be close to the Apostle Paul. One of these days, very soon, I think, we're going to see him once again, right? You believe that? I'm looking forward to that opportunity to connect with people I've read about, but I never even met. Isn't that going to be great? Heaven's going to be a wonderful place. We've got to be ready for Jesus when he comes. So here in Philippians, and by the way, I'm using the New International Version, not New International, New English Version of the Bible. They happen to be replaced in a lot of people's homes and in churches by others. But it's a pretty good translation, and they're usually available inexpensively at yard sales, just a tip. Value Village, that kind of place. You know what I'm saying. So if you want another Bible, and I've got a stack of them over there, if you want another Bible, this might not be a bad one because it kind of brings the language a little closer to our time. Philippians chapter 4, and let's see here in verse 1. I'm reading, and it says, farewell. I wish you all joy in the Lord. This is Paul talking to the church. He says goodbye. And then his next thought is, I want you to be happy in Jesus. Good news, isn't it? And then he says, have joy. So his big statement is, be happy, be joyful. Recognize that you are blessed because you've read the end of the book and you know how the story ends. It ends in a place that's far better than anything we've experienced up to now. First point, be joyful. The second point is from verse 5 over here. In the New English Bible, it says, let your magnanimity be manifest to all. The way that you relate to people. Faith is probably, dare I say this, not worth much if your faith is not livable on a daily basis. So, when you and I are not part of the scene anymore, if Jesus doesn't come soon, I would like for people to be able to remember us as people who were wonderful to be around, not because of us, but because Jesus was the center. And we were following him, and in following him, it made us better people. Is that fair? I think that would be a wonderful, wonderful testimony to have through life. And then in verse 6, I want you to notice what it says. We read that he says, the Lord is near. This is an interesting statement. And that's kind of the capstone of the whole discussion in verse 6. And then he says this, don't have any anxiety because the Lord is near, right? Here's the first statement, Lord is near. Then he says, don't have anxiety, don't be worried. We're living in a world in which there are a lot of worried people. I mean, there are folks who won't bring their dogs by to let me pet them anymore because they're afraid I might give the dog a coronavirus or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And so we're facing the issues of a world that is kind of characterized by fear in the minds of an awful lot of people. So he says, don't be anxious, but in everything, make your requests known to God in prayer and petition. So pray often, he says. It's kind of like the whole thing you've heard lately. Wash your hands often. Have you heard anybody say that? You know, wash it for, what's the idea? 20 seconds, I think. And make sure that you have a lot of bubbles. That's what I've been told. There's a girl on NHK TV, which is the Japanese channel, and you can pick it up on your computer, that shows you just exactly how to wash your hands. I've been washing hands for a lot of years, but this young lady had some new twists to it that I found very interesting. So in the process of this, it says, so pray to God. And then there's this wonderful statement here. Make your requests known to God, and there are no empty shelves, by the way, in the kingdom of heaven. Think about that one. All right? Make your requests known to God in prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Sounds like a holiday almost. Thanksgiving. Love it. So we're thankful even in times that are unusual. And then, verse 7, notice what it says. Then the peace of God, which is beyond our utmost understanding, will keep guard over your hearts and over your thoughts in Christ Jesus. How to live a life of faith. I don't care whether you're like my son-in-law on a kayak trip down a beautiful river. To him, that's as good as it gets. Or if you are sheltering in place, or if you're having an unusual experience of having to have, let's say, medical treatments, or if a friend of yours is doing some sort of distancing and you wish that friend were closer. There are things that we can't do, and we can dwell on the can'ts, but this little thought from the writings of the Apostle Paul is that here's what you can do. So let's not dwell upon the parts that are dropping out in this time. I just heard the other day that one of my mom's sisters, my great Aunt Lucille, no, just my regular aunt, but she is a great person. My Aunt Lucille went to sleep the other night and she never woke up. It wasn't about the health stuff that's going on now. She was just old, 95. And when you get a little bit older yourself, it's nice to hear that your people live to be very old. Isn't that true? And so Aunt Lucille didn't make it, but we have wonderful memories of Aunt Lucille. And we can't be there, but we know that there's going to be a day of reunions. I may have told this story out in Newfoundland before, but when I was a little kid, I always used to be kind of happy but a little anxious when my aunts showed up for a family reunion, because when I was a little guy, my aunts would come into town, and then they would want to greet me, and they always wanted to give me a little kiss, you know. Well, maybe not a little kiss, but anyway, they would come to kiss me, and I would always try to keep the car between me and the aunts, because, you know, I was not really into the whole kissing scene in those early days in my single-digit years. And yet, one of these days, in the eternal kingdom, I'll greet those aunts again. And I don't know what's going to be acceptable in heaven, but if kissing is okay, I'm sure my aunts will come up and do it to me again. And I don't mind it now that I'm a little bit older. You know, I'm a little more mature. I see things differently than I did when I was a child. I'm so grateful for the good news of the plan of salvation. I'm so glad that Jesus shared with us the book, and that some of us have cheated and read the last part of the book. You know, my mother was a librarian. She said to me when she was trying to train me how to read, always leave the end of the book for the end. Well, we're pretty close to the end, and it's appropriate for you to read the end of the book anytime you feel like it'd be a good idea. Go ahead and read it, because the way the story ends is beautiful. One of these days, we're going to see Jesus. Those of you in Newfoundland have an advantage over everybody else, because you're going to be the first folks in Canada to see him. He's going to come from the east, you know, and head to the west. And Gary, out there in Alberta, if you're still on, it'll finally get to you out there in Alberta as well. And it'll be a wonderful experience when we see Jesus and we have the opportunity to greet him in peace. What a day that will be. I'm looking forward to it. I know you're looking forward to it. So let's get ready for Jesus to come, and let's live every day of our lives as though Jesus could come this afternoon. Somebody said to me the other day, Pastor, I never realized how quickly things could happen until this whole thing hit. And now they won't take money from us except if you have a credit card or a debit card or something like that. And they were remarking about that. And I said, yeah, well, you know, sometimes we've gotten in our minds that things are going to take a long time to do this or to do that. It's good to know that Jesus' timeline and our timeline may be just a little bit different. And that's okay, because I'm ready for Jesus to come. Are you ready for Jesus to come? Count me in. That's where I'm at. So please, let's plan to be ready for Jesus when he comes. May God bless you each one. And one of these days, I believe, through faith, I'm going to be able to be out there in Newfoundland and Labrador once again, and be able to see the beautiful, colorful houses, the wonderful countryside, the warm and loving people that live in Newfoundland, and Air Canada will bring me there. I like that idea. And then we'll be able to see each other once again. Stay safe, be careful, and God bless you each one.